We are live now.
All right. Well, we welcome everybody. I will bang the gavel, and I'm going to call to order the February 11, 2021 NVTA Northern Virginia Transportation Authority Governance and Personnel Committee meeting. The first thing we're going to do is, if I can have a resolution to conduct the meeting electronically, and you will see you will find that that resolution in your agenda package. Is there a motion to conduct the meeting electronically?
So moved. Ann
So
Wheeler.
moved by Ms. Wheeler, seconded by Ms. Crystal. Any discussion on that motion? Is everybody here? I do see Jeff. I think everybody's here. Very good. All right. Anyone who opposes that, please make that known by saying aye. Great. That motion will pass unanimously. Hopefully everyone got a chance to look at their meeting minutes from the meeting on January 14th. You got a chance to review those. If you did, if you have no changes to that, is there a motion to accept the meetings from the 19th?
So moved, Madam
Sorry,
Chair.
from the 14th. Moved by Ms. Crystal. Is there a second?
Seconded by Ann Wheeler.
Seconded by Chair Wheeler. Great. Any discussion on that motion for to accept the minutes from January 14th? Seeing none, anybody who disagrees with that motion, please say aye. That motion will also pass unanimously. Now we're going to have a report from Ms. Baynard and Ms. Backman on the General Assembly update. General Assembly has crossed over. Wait a minute, they've crossed over, sine die, and went into a new session already, right? Is that right?
Almost about 4 days, but yes.
Almost 4 days.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
So we are, it's the special session, but for all intents and purposes, it's the normal schedule we would have if they had agreed to do 45 days when they started on the 13th. There were Monday and Tuesday were quiet days for them. There were some judicial interviews, but they're back at it yesterday. The House Appropriations, Senate Finance and Appropriation Committees reported out their amendments to the governor's introduced budget. And that's frankly where we've seen the most activity on some items that we would be interested in. I will go back and say that, again, as I've reported before, from a transportation perspective, there's been nothing to address our revenue resources. There's nothing that's fooling around with smart scale. From a transportation perspective, it has been, I think the General Assembly members would see this as the next step from the adoption of the clean energy policy last year. Last year, the Virginia Environmental Justice Act was adopted, and they moved this year into looking at transportation infrastructure as part of the pieces of the economy of our life that has to be addressed if Virginia is going to meet its net zero emissions goal in 2045. And so it's been the bills that we've talked about before, dealing with transportation and climate change, and really it's, what can you do to reduce the use of, well, let me go back. What can you do to expand the use of and access to vehicles powered by electrical battery, both individual personal uses and school buses, affirming through these policies that greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions are a health crisis, advocates for reductions of vehicle miles travel or having a less vehicle-centric transportation solutions. And so those bills are all moving through the General Assembly. I would say about half of them are being adopted along party line votes, with relying on the Democrat majority to get passed, but not all. And again, they run the gamut from having to address weight limits so that vehicles that are powered by electric vehicles, which are heavier, are legally allowed on interstates. The bill to create an electric vehicle rebate program passed the House and is before the Senate. The Delegate Keem's bill that wanted to fund and create a program to assist school systems to buy electric buses ended up creating a fund holding spot, but not creating additional money at this time. A number of bills which call on development of policy for a statewide vehicle emission standards that has passed the House. And the other one that I think is that we'll be watching, will definitely involve our locality members, is House Joint Resolution 542, which is the Transit Equity and Modernization Study. Chair of the House Transportation Committee, Delegate McQuinn, is the patron of that bill, and the House has dedicated $500,000 to fund that 2-year study, but with an interim report due at the end of this year. I'm going to stop there to see if anybody has any questions about the whole transportation and climate change part of the world.
Well, these are the same things you've talked to us about before, Tracy, so it's not a whole lot new.
No, nothing new there. So the new piece is, we did, as I said, we got budget amendments yesterday, and the House and Senate could not be more different in what they're doing. The House didn't add a lot to what was proposed in the governor's budget. So from a transportation perspective, the House budget will it retain the governor's $5 million in general fund money for the Transit Ridership Incentive Fund. And again, that was created last year in the omnibus bill. Those funds are to be used for two reasons. One, to reduce or eliminate fares for low-income riders, to encourage them to use it, and then also dedication of the funds to assist to insist more use of transit in urbanized areas. And actually, that was language that was put in specifically for areas like Northern Virginia, Central Virginia, particularly around Richmond and Hampton Roads, highly urbanized regions, and have more folks use transit. The House also retained the governor's $50 million general fund to advance new intercity passenger rail service coming out of the New River Valley up to Washington, D.C. And of course, they funded the study I was just talking to. The Senate, however, went much further, and part of the federal COVID relief package that was approved in December included specific pots of money that went to state departments of transportation. It's estimated that Virginia would receive about 252 million or so. Most of it goes to the state. And so the Senate decided to program all 215 million. And I would say probably the one that's most important for Northern Virginia is, you may recall that we learned that there's a gap in the state's appropriation that goes to the Metro Capital Fund, the 154, because of the weakness of the hospitality agent industry and TOT. There's about a $22 million gap. So the Senate is taking some of that federal money and is going to pay that. So it's a one-time for this fiscal FY21. So that would bring Virginia back up to the full 154. They also decided to swap out the governor's money for the Transit Ridership Fund for, again, money, the federal funds, to use that $5 million. They increased the statewide intercity passenger rail for the New River Valley, going from 50 million to 130, almost 138 million, again, federal funds. There's also $40 million. I'm sorry about the typo. It says 50 on the slides, but it's actually 40. It was a confusion in the Senate language. For statewide multi-use trail initiative, the governor had initially proposed $5 million from general fund money. The Senate has upped it to $40 million, and they've dedicated it to a number of projects, which are listed. And, there's a W&O trail here, different trails around the state, but then they're directing the secretary to do a study to look at, okay, we've outlined these 5 projects, but we know there should be more. Create a process with the stakeholders on how to identify, assess costs of, an implementation plan to advance additional multi-use trails across the Commonwealth.
Is the Senate taken to printing money? I mean, what?
Well, it's the Senate. It's the federal transportation money, so they're using that.
Oh, okay.
And by swapping out, so the governor had $55 million in general fund dedicated to 2 projects. By swapping that out, it allowed the Senate to use that $55 million for other uses like K-12 and
okay. All right.
All right. So that sort of was their thinking. They just swapped it out. And the last bit that the Senate spent, the City of Falls Church and Virginia Tech have an innovative transportation test pilot going on in City of Falls Church. And so they're going to use $10 million of this to help with that pilot. Unfortunately, neither the Senate nor the House had an appropriation to assist Northern Virginia localities with their local WMATA share. That was that $30 million request. The Senate stated in their presentation that they knew it was out there, but they felt it was more important to do the Metro Capital Fund piece first. And frankly, that may have been more an issue of how they could use the federal funds and how they couldn't use the federal funds. And they took the one where they could use the federal funds. So, sort of interesting that's going on. And the 2 bodies will debate their budgets, if not tomorrow, Monday. And then they'll go right into conference pretty much quickly after a day of swapping.
So Tracy, just on a process question, and maybe I should know this, but I don't. How does the body go sine die and then come back with the same bills? I mean, I thought once you went sine die, you're done with that session, and now the next session is whole new bills. How does that happen?
So when they convened in January, they passed a new procedural resolution that was agreed to by the House and Senate, and they had negotiated how they were going to do this. So the procedural resolution provided them that said a committee or the body is allowed to, by vote, carry over bills from the regular session, because that's what it said. They carried over the bills from the regular session into the special session.
And this only applies for this special session this year?
Per this operational resolution. So so clearly they could approve another operational session or a procedural resolution in the future that it would allow the same thing. But it was heavily negotiated between the House and the Senate and the minority and the majority to do that.
Okay.
Again, it's a quiet session. So that's where we are.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, thoughts, feelings, musings? No? It's really not much going on. So yeah.
Chair Randall, I would
Yes.
just ask Tracy, is the Metro money that they're proposing to use, is it for fiscal year 21 or 22? Because
It's for fiscal year 21 is how it's listed in the budget.
I thought the Commonwealth would actually use some, what were they calling it? Some unobligated bonds to cover the deficit in FY21.
Yeah, I hear you. But well, and again, remember, this is how the Senate is writing it. It may need to be tweaked. That's not unusual sometimes. But they've got it focused in the FY 2021 fiscal year. Now, again, I agree with you. The General Assembly, the CTB had thought about using bonds for fiscal 21. So there's also the issue of, and I just don't know the details of this, about by when do they have to spend that money? Because it's the federal COVID relief funds. So again, depending on what the timing is and everything, that could get tweaked a little bit and switch to FY22.
Okay.
Okay. Michelle, you good? I'm sorry, Mayor. Mayor, you good?
Can you tell?
I'm sorry.
It's
This is why I come in for meetings, because otherwise, yeah, I don't come in.
you can't. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I know where to go if I need more.
Right. Chair Wheeler, you good?
I think so. It'll be interesting to see how they work it all out. They're very different, but although that doesn't above my pay grade, won't worry about it today.
Chairman McKay.
I'm good, although I do want to bring one thing particularly to Katie's attention, because there is a budget amendment that Senator Stasslaw put in that would withhold Metro's operating money from coming to NVTC, which of course is the pass-through for our local NVTC jurisdictions to pay our Metro operating subsidy. And his budget amendment requires that the WMATA board rename the McLean Metro Station. And our board voted to support the renaming of that station. The Metro board rejected that. And so Senator Sasslaw has a budget amendment in that, in essence, forces the Metro board to do that if the money is to come to NVTC. Of course, I talked to the senator today. That presents a significant challenge because Metro doesn't care. If the money from the state doesn't come to NVTC, they're just going to come to localities for it.
Correct.
And so I'm trying to work on, spent the better part of the day today trying to work on a compromise to solve that problem. And I just want to make sure if anyone hears about that, that they know what's going on and that we're trying to work out compromise. But it certainly affects every jurisdiction that participates in NVTC.
What's the station named? What's the issue with the station name right now?
It's the McLean Station, and Capital One built a large performing arts facility at that station, and they wanted the station to include the Capital One Performing Arts Center as part of the station name. And our board supported that, and Metro rejected that. And so we're working on a compromise that hopefully can recognize that there's an arts center generically on the station name, and perhaps we could look at some wayfinding signs within the station that more properly name it. And I'm trying to push that compromise because I think it's a good one. I think it's a fair one, and I think it solves this problem. And that's what we're working on. And so more to come on that, but I didn't want to let this particular update on General Assembly activities go by without sharing that, because it could have potentially very large ramifications if we don't settle this in the next couple of weeks.
So if I may, Madam Chair, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Chairman McKay, because I know that you and your colleagues in Fairfax are in somewhat of a rock and a hard place here, because you'd substantively like to see this go forward, but I wouldn't presume to speak for you, but I might imagine not in this way. And so I'm really appreciative of your efforts to find that compromise. And from our end, on behalf of the commission, we're doing our best to keep those who might be hitting the roof from doing so while we can let that unfold. So thank you.
And I think the budget amendment had that intended result, fortunately or unfortunately. And so we're trying to iron it out into a much more productive conversation that settles this. But certainly anytime withholding money from Metro is at stake, it's a regional issue, and I know we need to fix this in Fairfax with Senator Sasslaw, and we're going to work very hard to do that. I feel very confident that we will.
That's great. And I think it's been a little bit of a lesson, perhaps, that the perception that the Virginia General Assembly can dictate the action of a WMATA board is bipartisan, whereas before we might not have known that, and now we do. So thank you for your work.
You mentioned their control over local governments, which we'll save for another day.
Yeah. Okay. Miss Crystal, do you have anything else?
I don't. I'm interested to see that note about the trails, and I hope, Ms. Boehner, you'll keep us updated on how that shakes out, particularly, whether this might be a competitive funding program moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. I would agree. I'm actually hoping that they can come up with some money that they'll be there every year, and there'll be a process for regions or localities to get that funds to advance. I know all of you have trails that you're trying to connect. I know the region has sections that it wants to connect to have one big. So, and frankly, I'm hoping this would be something that the next administration would pick up from this one after it gets resolved. So,
well, and I think my colleagues on the authority might support the idea of the authority not having to be the main source for trail funding in the future, given how Arlington commenters really roll deep whenever we have those projects.
Not quite as deep as Hillsborough, but yes, you do. That is true. Okay, Ms. Beckman, you have anything?
Madam Chair, I do not.
Okay, all right. I think we are good then. Without objection, we will adjourn. And we will see you guys all back here for the authority meeting. All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.